Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. I'm just going to keep moving in Luke chapter 2 because there's a lot here that we seem to keep overlooking. And it's another missed opportunity. When we get to verse 22, you see, then it was time for their purification offering, as required by the law of Moses after the birth of a child. So his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. This calls back to Leviticus 19. Just for a brief summary, when a male child was born, on the eighth day, he's circumcised, and then 33 days later, the mother has to go for a purification ceremony. So this is like day 41 of Jesus' life. And verse 24 says, so they offered the sacrifice required in the law of the Lord, either a pair of turtle doves or two young pigeons. That's not actually the normal sacrifice. That's the one that's a provision for someone who can't afford the normal sacrifice. So this tells us that Mary and Joseph are poor, which, by the way, means the wise men haven't shown up yet because they didn't get these elaborate gifts. But then here's where it gets interesting. Verse 25 says, at that time there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. It gives a bit more introduction. He's really old, but God has told him that he's not going to die until he sees the Messiah with his own eyes. And so when Mary and Joseph bring Jesus into the temple, verse 28 says, Simeon was there. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, Sovereign Lord, now let your servant die in peace. As you have promised, I have seen your salvation, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people Israel. Now, not only is this a crazy thing to happen when Mary and Joseph are just here trying to go through their normal purification ceremony. They didn't come here for some crazy old guy to take the kid in his arms and start saying this mind-blowing stuff. They're as thrown off by this as anybody. But there's some really epic stuff in what Simeon just said. Not only has he just identified this little baby, who is just a little baby as far as anyone can tell, is the Messiah. Other than those shepherds we looked at last week, he's the first person to recognize this. That's special because those shepherds had an angel that said, the Messiah's over there. Here's some signs to tell that when you find him. And they went with that. Simeon didn't have that so far as we know. It tells us the Spirit led him to the temple that day. And when he saw Jesus, he knew. That means that Simeon was in touch with the Spirit. He was listening to God personally. This wasn't an angel appeared and gave a message, but he could hear the Holy Spirit telling him that's the one right there. And also, he identifies Jesus as a light to reveal God to the nations, not to Jerusalem, not to the tribes of Israel, but to the nations, to the world. That's a really big deal, too. Not many people in the temple are talking about God being revealed to all those dirty Gentiles outside of the temple. We don't really know if this drew a crowd, how many people were there. We do know this is just over a month after they had come to town for the whole census thing going on. And so it's a safe bet. There's probably a fair number of people in Jerusalem at this point in time. The temple's probably a fairly crowded place, and Simeon is anything but subtle. Did anyone take notice of this? Did anyone else listen to the fact that this baby is the Messiah and he's going to reveal God to the entire world? Well, actually, at least one person listened because verse 36 tells us Anna, a prophet, was also there in the temple. We get her introduction. She's also quite old, but she spent all of her time in the temple worshiping, praying, praising God. And verse 38 says, she came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. She talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue Jerusalem. So now it's no longer a question of if people were listening when Simeon said it. Anna is going out and talking to everybody. She's a lot like those shepherds last week. She's excited and she's coming and she's telling everybody, oh my goodness, it happened today, right over there. That baby is the Messiah. And again, there's no record of any crowd forming, of people taking this seriously at all. And I think it's the exact same reason. Everyone there thought, oh, sure, yeah, the Messiah is that little baby from these poor people. And I just can't help noticing that Luke gives us back to back two stories of people missing the Messiah right there in front of them because he didn't look the way they wanted him to look. We still do this. We have expectations of what we want God to do, what we think he's going to do. And when he's going off in a different direction, when he's setting things up, his own way that doesn't always make sense to us because he doesn't need to make sense to us. He knows what he's doing. And so often we are completely oblivious. We can totally miss what he's doing around us and trying to do within our own lives. And it's so important to be like Simeon, to be able to listen to the Holy Spirit, because I feel pretty certain that he wasn't expecting the Messiah to be a baby either. But when the Spirit told him, that's it right there, he knew enough to throw out any expectations he had because he knew the one who had told him. He knew the Holy Spirit's voice and could say, then no matter what I thought it was going to be, this is what it is because he doesn't lie. And that's what each of us needs to learn how to do, is to listen to him, to hear his voice and let him guide us and speak to us directly so that we don't miss the things that he's doing, so we can be in step with him and let him guide us into more than we could ever possibly imagine.